What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And join me to do just that is Justin Boone. Boone, we have a packed show for the people here today. What's going on, buddy?
We do have a very busy show. I'm not in coping corner, but I'm trying to cope a little bit myself. I'm rocking the Bills hat today, trying to get the good vibes out there, get the Bills back on the right track here. Not looking good right now, Harmon, for a team that I thought was going to be a Super Bowl contender. They got a lot of work to do between now and then if they're going to make it.
Funny story. You are brave for wearing that Bills hat. But yeah, I'm instantly I just said we had a jam-packed show. Producer Colin's like, hey guys, brisk pace today. We got a lot to cover. I'm immediately going to derail us with a personal story here. Because you're wearing the Bills hat, I forgot about this, but I went in for an eye exam today. Cause got to keep these puppies up to date. Went in for an eye exam today. The, one of the ladies doing the scan, she's wearing a Bills kind of, fleece thing over her scrubs. I'm like, oh, Bills fan. She goes, yeah, we effing suck. And I was like, all right, no
all right.
No further questions, Your Honor. But yeah,
pretty definitive.
I didn't want to mention, I didn't want to mention, I'm in football. I know, whatever. But I was like, well, I guess it could be better, but it could be worse. And she said, no, it couldn't be worse. I was like, oh, well, all right. I guess that's how Bills fans are doing right now. But at least you're willing to show your colors in public here.
Yeah, and I'm not going to that level yet. I'm not cursing yet. I'm not going to say that they're down that bad, but yeah, there's a lot of work to do, man. It is not looking great right now, and we're even getting dunked on by the Dolphins. Like, come on. And then the possible, what's the story there? That Mike McDaniel's driving by the bar down in Miami where the Bills fans congregate, and he's just driving by, cruising past. He wouldn't admit that it was him. Sure looked like him. He also kind of tried to throw it out there that maybe it was AI, and who knows. But either way, everybody's having fun with it, and there is still lots of time for the Bills to get things right, though it's not looking good at the moment.
Well, speaking of the Bills, their former offensive coordinator is out of time because our first news of the day, we do have 3 news items to hit here. First news of the day, and this is a big one, Brian Daboll, former head coach of the New York Giants, is out. It sounds as if GM Joe Shane is going to be safe. He's safe right now. He's expected to lead the head coaching search. I will say, Boone, I joked, I kind of like half jokingly said on the recap show yesterday with Chris Allen that if I was Giants management, I would fire Brian Daboll right after this game just because of how reckless he was with Jackson Dart as a rusher and just all of that. Obviously, that is not why he was fired. A lot of other things went wrong here for New York, but it's just a little bit of a complicated situation, pal, because while, I think Brian Daboll put his job security and winning games and all that ahead of the health of his quarterback, from a fantasy standpoint, we like Jackson Dart as a fantasy quarterback, and Brian Daboll, this was clearly his guy. So what's sort of your reaction to this news, not just now, rest of season, but also what we expect maybe for beyond this year with Jackson Dart and this new head coaching search?
I think from the Daboll aspect of things, like, yes, he's his guy, but there was like a little bit of desperation in that, like from the Daboll side, was there not? Like the way he kind of followed him around like a puppy dog, and it really seemed like he was just trying to hitch his wagon because he realized Jackson Dart was potentially going to continue to be his meal ticket. If he could somehow just intertwine their futures, then maybe he could stick around. But yeah, like you said, there's been way too many mistakes all across the board with this team. And I really think that, I think his fate was kind of signed when Daniel Jones went to Indy and started having success the way he is. Like, does that not factor into all of this? Like, you had a QB who now is showing he can be a quarterback on a team that is a clear playoff contender and playing very well at the moment in that system. And obviously there's lots of other factors around that, the talent that the Colts have, all that sort of stuff. But I really think the idea that Daniel Jones was in New York and now he's gone elsewhere and been able to have success, and the Giants weren't having success until Jackson Dart got under center. So I really attribute all of the success, all of the games they've won and all the games they've been competitive in this year. I think that really goes to Jackson Dart. He's just lifting all boats in New York. So it's time for Daboll to go. And I think they should just completely clean house, go full new regime, because it's awful when you see people in positions of power like Daboll was, who wants to keep his job and may not think about what's best for this young quarterback. And he is doing things like, running him into a wall constantly and putting him in harm's way like that. So it was a bad situation in New York. Getting rid of Daboll isn't going to fix everything here. Hopefully Dart can come back and be healthy, and I think he's still going to be able to have success. I don't think Brian Daboll was like the one true key here that was keeping things going. I think Jackson Dart is that guy. They're going to find ways to still be competitive, to still put up fantasy points. The key just comes down to Jackson Dart getting healthy and hopefully staying healthy once he is.
Yeah, I'm at least a little interested to see what Mike Kafka does as the interim head coach, because he's a guy that I think it was interesting when Daboll and him got hired together. They come from very different backgrounds and different schools of thoughts. So just at least interested to see what Kafka does here, because there were times where, and this leads me to my just overall take on Daboll, I think there were times where, Kafka was the play caller and then Daboll took the job back. It just, to me, I don't think Daboll was ever, I think his fate was sealed, honestly, when they decided to bring him back this year. I don't think he was ever acquitted to being a head coach. And frankly, I would have just cleaned house at the beginning of this year. You landed on Dart. That's great. It seems like Dart is good, but we never know with young quarterbacks. Look at what's going on with Bo Nix in his second season. That's not going very well. Jaden Daniels took a little bit of a step back this year. So we'll see what happens next year. But I do think Dart makes the job relatively attractive to the right coach. Frankly, Absolutely. I wouldn't be all that surprised if I think it wouldn't be all that surprising if Joe Shane's the GM, they hire the current Bills offensive coordinator to replace the former Bills offensive coordinator, if Joe Brady is still a hot head coaching candidate this time in the offseason. So we'll see. But I do think rest of season, this doesn't really change anything for Dart. The only thing would be maybe if they dial back on the rushing, that might take some of the ceiling off of him as a fantasy player, which I think we should be willing to sacrifice for the guy's long-term health. I mean, 4th concussion check so far this year. We'll see what happens. He might miss a game too. So just the Giants are playing out the string, which is kind of how this was always going to go. Let's get to the next news item.
I do want to say before we move on that I agree with you that I think this is a super attractive job, right? There's a lot of pieces here. Could you not see this thing turn around very quickly? I think they could make a couple moves in the offseason, and all of a sudden this team is like a legit playoff contender because of Jackson Dart and some of the other guys they have. But I don't think they're that many moves away from this team potentially being pretty damn good.
I guess it depends what Neighbor's knee injury is like. I don't know.
This is assuming that they have their superstar wide receiver back next year. They got a very good left tackle. They got some good pass rushers, all these things. Hopefully Cam Scatteraboo can come back next year and do something. Yes, there's a few situations that need to pan out there, but I'm saying at some very key positions, they have guys, assuming health, of course. They have some guys, and if you bring in the right coach here, I'm very interested to see what happens. And I think fantasy-wise, everyone should be interested.
There was just a part of me that was a little skeptical of the long-term viability of Cam Scatteraboo and Jackson Dart. And again, I just want to see more from these guys. And I just want to not rush over my skis too quickly with these young quarterbacks. Well, I do think it will attract some candidates for sure, but let's see this guy put together a long stretch of good play before we're kind of putting him in that inner circle, because otherwise, beyond Neighbors and Dart and Cam Scatteraboo, if they are those guys, it's pretty light everywhere else. There's some promising players here, but I do think they need kind of a complete overhaul of the pass catching room for the time being. So I'm interested to see what happens the rest of the way with Dart, and if he can continue to build positive momentum heading into his second season. Some positive news on the Bengals front of things. Joe Burrow returns to practice this week. He's got a potential return around Thanksgiving. It looks like week 14-ish. The Bengals officially opened the practice window for Joe Burrow less than 2 months after the toe surgery and landed him on IR. He sounds like he's always been thinking actually Thanksgiving might be his return here. So what does this do for people who have maybe stashed Joe Burrow, or how are we feeling about this whole Bengals experience? They're not exactly looking like a playoff team right now, so I'm not sure what Burrow's coming back to.
I mean, who cares about the playoff team aspect? We just care about the fantasy points. And fantasy-wise, this offense is humming with Joe Flacco. So you only hope that Joe Burrow could step back in and not have to knock off the rust for a week or two, that he could step back in and just keep things going. And it's Joe Burrow. I don't think that there is going to be a ton of rust for him to knock off. The guy's a fantastic quarterback. So I'm looking ahead here, and like he's not just like people that are stashing him, he's also available in over 40% of leagues. And if anyone's watching this live right now, go out, see if he's available on the waiver wire. They were on bye this week, so he would be a free agent potentially. You could do that move where you drop one of your bench players, you pick him up. I will not lie. There was one league where I saw him still available. I made that move today to get him on my roster because you look ahead and like, it's not terrible when he comes back to, assuming he's back for the fantasy playoffs, and hopefully maybe we get him out there in week 14. You see what he looks like, and then you can feel good about starting him in week 15. But the Ravens in week 15, the Dolphins in week 16, I think those are games we could see a lot of points scored where we could see Burrow putting up a good fantasy day and continuing to help these other guys produce. So I'm pretty interested in what Burrow could do in the final month. Of course, we need these guys to keep potentially staying competitive in games and all of that so that they don't just shut him down. But with him acting this way, I think we're going to see him in December, and I think it's going to be good for fantasy.
Yeah, the thing is, it probably can't really be any better than it has been, right? Because things have been good with Flacco. So that there is a kind of that aspect of it, of course, but they're only 2 games behind the Steelers right now, so that division is definitely winnable. I mean, the Ravens are the betting favorite, and they have a 4-5 record right now. So I don't think Cincy can look at themselves and be like, hey, we're completely out of it, as long as they're able to stack a few wins here before Thanksgiving. But yeah, Burrow said today our division is wide open. We play Pittsburgh this week. Everything's in front of us. It's very rare our division looks like this, but it does this year. So yeah, we'll see if Burrow can get back and what this Bengals team looks like when he does. Last piece of news to hit on here. Oh, this sucks. Garrett Wilson is out 3 to 4 weeks with a knee sprain. We had a panic meter submission for him. We're not going to discuss him as a panic player because guess what? Your player's hurt. That's not great, especially on a team that's going nowhere right now. Garrett Wilson has sneakily been really good this year from a fantasy perspective. It's been a little bit up and down, but he barely did anything, of course, in this game where nobody did anything for the Jets passing game, and then he re-aggravated that knee that's been bothering him all season. So he's out 3 to 4 weeks is the expectation. I mean, what is this Jets team going to look like in 4 weeks, though? He is definitely a candidate to be shut down this year, I fear.
Yeah, it's too bad because it's not even like there's anyone else in the receiving core that you could look to and say, okay, now that guy's going to get a ton of opportunity. Like maybe AD Mitchell, now that he's come over, like he would be the only guy that you would stash. And even that's just like, we're talking very deep leagues, right? That's more of like a dynasty stash kind of guy. I don't know that we're going to see AD Mitchell come on and put up something significant in terms of stats where you're going to put him into your lineup in redraft, but it's possible. So in very deep leagues, you could go get him. But I think they're just going to continue to spread the ball around, and we haven't really seen anyone produce great because Justin Fields, I mean, what was it, 54 passing yards this week? Like he has multiple games where he has played 100% of the snaps and finished with like 50 passing yards in these games or somewhere around there. It is brutal. I think he has 4 games total on the season where he's been held under like 60 passing yards. A couple of them he left early, but still, this passing offense, when they get into some of these tough matchups, they completely crumble. So yes, when they play the Bengals or defenses like that, they can have decent days. But if they're against anybody that is of any quality, you're looking at a game where Fields could completely fall apart. I thought he was going to get pulled in this one. Obviously, they kept him in, and it seemed like it ended up being the right decision, I guess. But like, I think we're going to see Tyrod Taylor before the season ends here. Like, this whole thing is just going south, and it's impressive that a guy like Breece Hall can put up some stats. Or earlier this season, obviously, like you mentioned, we saw Garrett Wilson as a top 10 fantasy receiver. It's just, can we get this guy a good quarterback for a full season? Like, he continues to put up decent numbers, and to do it with pretty bad quarterback play overall. I would just love to see him get, paired up with a good young QB that he can grow with the rest of his career, because he acts like he wants to stay in New York, but they need to get some pieces around him to help him.
Yeah, apparently when teams reached out about him at the trade line, they were told he is untouchable. So I'm sure Garrett Wilson wanted to be a little bit more open than that in terms of him going elsewhere, but alas, he remains in New York, and now he's banged up. Yeah, Justin Fields, 54 passing yards, 42 of those came on a screen to Breece Hall. So behind the line of scrimmage, not exactly an inspiring passing performance for the New York Jets. All right, with that, perfect time to transition into the post-week 10 People's Panic Meter. Let's fire up the post-week 10 People's Panic Meter.
Would you say it's time for everyone to panic? Yes, I would, Kent.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening.
No. Wait.
Everybody stay calm. Stay calm.
What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
The Panic Meter is presented by Dentech, protecting your teeth from fantasy stress, one matchup at a time. We have 4 tiers here in the People's Panic Meter: no panic, some panic, total panic, and coping corner. Let's do a little quick check-in on the coping corner. It's pretty tight here in the coping corner right now. We've got Keon Coleman, Darnell Mooney, Kenneth Walker, the entire Commanders offense, Brian Thomas Jr., Calvin Ridley, Isaiah Pacheco, TJ Hawkinson, Tony Pollard, Justin Fields, Alvin Kamara, and the one I think we need to discuss, unless you're secretly a Treylon Burks truther and the fact that he led the Commanders in receiving yards this weekend makes you want to take out the Commanders offense. I don't think it does. My God, what a depressing sentence to have just said. I think the guy we need to discuss here is TreVeyon Henderson, the last member here of the coping corner. Obviously, an outrageous stat line from this past week's game, a couple of really explosive runs. Was that enough for you to say he needs to come out of the coping corner right now?
You know it was. You don't need me to say it. We know that it was. This is 3 weeks in a row now, right? And this is everything we wanted to see from him. Even earlier in the season when he wasn't playing as much, you wanted to see some of these big plays. You wanted to see him doing something that it was at least a sign that he deserved more opportunity. And early in the year, he wasn't. He was making mistakes. He was losing playing time. Now we have a couple of injuries in the backfield, and all of a sudden it's a completely different situation than when we put him in, right? So you look at the last 3 games, 75 scrimmage yards, 87 yards, and now this one, like you mentioned, 150 yards and the 2 TDs and the long runs, and it looks really good. And I think at this point, even if Ramondre Stevenson comes back, which I haven't seen an updated timeline on him, we have a few of these running backs that are out there where it's just kind of like, they're ruled out and who knows when they're coming back. Ramondre is kind of in that boat at the moment. So we'll see if we get an update this week on him. Even when he comes back, there's no way this is going back to what it used to be, right? It's either going to be some sort of, close split, or I think we see TreVeyon Henderson continue to take on a larger role. I don't think we say it so many times, like you can't put this back in the box. Like there's no way. The Patriots need guys that have juice like this. They need these explosive plays. And it was great to see. So yes, we are taking him out of the coping corner, and I think it's well-deserved.
Oh, yeah. It's the same calculus that we had with Chase Brown a few weeks ago. The situation has fundamentally changed now, where obviously for Chase Brown, it was Joe Flacco's there, not Jake Browning. That changes the complexion of the offense. For TreVeyon Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson's hurt. And, to your point, he has a toe injury. That means, and that's all they've said. Here's the deal. His toe is either he's got turf toe or it's broken. And I think if it was broken, he'd be on IR. So I'm guessing he's got turf toe, which Brock Purdy's got a turf toe injury, and he's another one of these guys every week. Well, Brock Purdy, he's getting to practice. He's not playing. We have no idea when Ramondre Stevenson is going to come back. And I agree with you that even if he does, TreVeyon Henderson, I pointed this out with Chris yesterday, he had those explosive runs. On a down-to-down basis, the run game was still not successful, but that's been the case all year. They're not getting singles and doubles, but it really helps when now you have a rookie who is just clearly playing better than he was to start the season. That's the thing. I've tried to not be one of these fantasy bros. Just, what are you doing, Mike Vrabel? Why aren't you playing this guy? It's because he's making rookies. He's not playing well in isolation. Now Henderson has actually started to play well. They're starting to figure out what he does well, which is a lot of these pitches and the tosses, which that was how they got one of those explosive plays. The other one was just a lane that was open, and he just shot through it. And guess what? Ramondre Stevenson is not shooting through those lanes. Terrell Jennings is not shooting through those lanes. TreVeyon Henderson is. So great game in pass protection too, by the way, for him. I just got done watching that offense, charting Kyle Williams. Clean pass pro stuff for Henderson, which I think is a big deal for him remaining on the field. So yeah, he is now somebody that I think you could start in fantasy. He's somebody that, hey, if he has a bad game, you can panic about that. You can freak out about it. That's what it means when we take you out of the coping corner. Like, you're officially back on the radar. And I think Henderson squarely is one of those players.
And I will just mention that we'll keep an eye on Alvin Kamara because he had over 100 scrimmage yards in this game. I don't think we expected that to happen. It was only the second time this season that that's happened for him. It's the first time that it's happened since week 2. So let's see him like we did with Henderson. We need to see him do it a few times before I start to trust and actually believe that he's a guy that deserves to be in fantasy lineups again. But at least we saw something from Alvin Kamara. And there were some changes that happened with Rashid Shaheed being traded. And, so maybe there's a chance that he could get back on the radar here as like a low end RB2, but I'm going to be very cautious about that. I need him to do it at least one, maybe 2 more times before we take him out.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck just bringing life to the Saints offense. You'll love to see it. All right, with that, let's get into the submissions to this week's People's Panic Meter, starting with Anthony, who sends this in. I'm back yet again with the same player as last week. That's when you know things are going well, when somebody's submitting you on a weekly basis. Justin Jefferson, this passing game looks anemic. So, what do I do with him? Should I just let it ride or try and sell based off of his name, even if it's selling a little low? Eric B. also sent in on J.J. McCarthy, which is obviously where the panic for Justin Jefferson is coming from. Let's put aside J.J. McCarthy because, nobody's playing J.J. McCarthy in fantasy. I actually just want to talk about Justin Jefferson. This is all related. What's the panic level for you on Justin Jefferson with how things are going right now?
I'm curious if you're going to disagree with me here, and I'm curious if most people would disagree with me, but I'm only going some panic on Justin Jefferson. And a huge part of it is the schedule. I'm going to say it again here. The schedule that they have coming up, I think there's going to be games where this all changes for him. You look at, he gets the Bears this week. That is definitely a winnable game. That's definitely a game where he could put up good stats. But when you look closer to the fantasy playoffs, the Commanders in week 14, the Cowboys in week 15, the Giants in week 16. Like those games, you cannot tell me that Justin Jefferson is not going to have some big performances in those games. And we're talking about the first 2 weeks of the fantasy playoffs, the Cowboys and the Giants. Those are 2 of the best possible matchups for fantasy receivers. And you're going to trade away the guy who is still one of the best receivers in the league, even though the offense hasn't looked the same, the offensive line injuries, the quarterback situation. We've talked about it ad nauseum all year long. And yet, Harmon, you're going to tell me you don't want to start Justin Jefferson against the Cowboys and the Giants in the fantasy playoffs? I just can't go more than some panic.
Okay, pull that schedule back up, producers. Pull that schedule back up here that we were just showing, because Boone is highlighting these playoff matchups. I'm looking at week 12 and I'm looking at week 13, Packers, Seahawks. You got to make it through those games to make it to the playoffs. And obviously one player is not all that matters. But anyways, what's your rebuttal to that?
No, I was going to say, we could put some caveats in here, right? And there's been times when I write the buy-sell column where I actually could put a guy in either because it just depends where your team is at. So yes, if we want to look at Justin Jefferson and say you have a losing team, you're barely fighting for a playoff spot, you need wins right now, in that scenario, yes, you could trade him, and you probably should trade him because you have to win these next few games. And there's a couple matchups in there that we are scared about, and that I think rightfully so, like you point out, those are 2 tough matchups. And even though he's great with the state of this offense right now in this passing attack, I don't know that you could trust him in it. So yeah, if you have a losing record, if you're trying to get into the playoffs, you need those wins immediately, then sure, look for the trade. But if you are heading to the playoffs, you think you're going to make it to the postseason, you don't necessarily need to win right away, I wouldn't take anything less than like a top 6 or 7 receiver or running back for him. Like I still think the price should be extremely high, because you're going to trade him away and you're going to regret it. Like, what are you going to get back right now for him that's going to give you the kind of production that he could potentially give you in those later season games from week 14 on?
I'm a little closer to total panic on Justin Jefferson just because of how concerning the McCarthy stuff is for me. I'm not saying he's been unplayable, but 12.7 points per game, 32% targets, 8.5 targets per game, 50% catch rate. And that's great. But just, I don't know, man. McCarthy, it's a weird thing where he looks like he's playing so sped up and everything is coming at him so fast. and yet he is constantly late on all these throws, which I think then he tries to just line drive things in. There's not a lot of touch. There's not a lot of timing. There's not a lot of accuracy. Now, he can get better. He's a young player. I don't think it means it's over for J.J. McCarthy just based on how he's played in these 4 games or whatever we've seen him so far. Yeah. 4. Yeah. I'm not writing him off forever. I just think right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Jefferson goes out there and has, an 80-yard game, 90-yard game against the Bears, and like that's the ceiling that we're talking about here. It's like, oh, this was the hit from this offense, and that's as good as it gets here.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I think he's going to come out and have a fine game there. You might not get great performances in those other 2 contests, and then I think he is going to finish the season strong. And I think there's a chance that McCarthy has a similar run out as well, where we keep coming back to the fact that, yes, right now, he is not a finished product. He doesn't necessarily look great. At the beginning of some of these games, he looks a little more comfortable, and then as the game goes on, he tends to make some weird decisions and turn the ball over a little bit. But I think down the stretch, as he gets more starts, as he gets a little more comfortable out there, there's certainly a chance that we see this guy. The light can click on at any moment. And we've seen, I don't want to compare him to other good quarterbacks because obviously I did that before the season and you just killed me for it. But there's other guys, I will say, that have come into the league that have had these same kind of struggles early on. And then that switch just flips and they start to get more comfortable and they start to produce. Not everybody is, a Jackson Dart where they come out right away and lead their team to these like shocking victories. So I am willing to give McCarthy a little bit of time. And I think just Jefferson being the player that he is, having that schedule, I think after a few more weeks, we're going to see these guys connect and they're going to do some meaningful things, I think, in the fantasy playoffs. That doesn't mean you should start JJ McCarthy, even though he is, showing that he's running a little bit. We had a season high for him with 48 rushing yards. We need that, I think, for his fantasy value to keep rising here. But right now, he's just a QB2 streamer. You would only consider him in very good matchups where you're a little bit desperate and the waiver wire is kind of picked thin. But we will talk about him when we get to the waiver wire section later. And then Justin Jefferson in good matchups, even with this quarterback. I am putting him in my lineup with confidence, and I will do that in the fantasy playoffs as well. And that's why I can't do it, Harmon. I'm staying some panic. You can go total panic, but I can't agree to it.
All right, cool. So we're at a little bit of a difference there. We'll revisit this because we'll see. Maybe Anthony will send in Justin Jefferson for a 3rd straight week next week. We'll see how it goes.
He'll have a great game against the Bears, and we'll be like he's doing great. And then he'll have terrible games the next 2 weeks, and we'll push it up to total panic, and then he'll finish the year strong. That's probably how it'll go.
And on and on and on and on it goes.
On and on.
That's the state of the state. Here it is. All right. Next one in comes from TT. This is another repeat offender here. Hi, guys. I know we had talked about Tetairoa McMillan earlier this season on the panic meter, but continues to underwhelm in a bad Panthers passing attack. Currently, Bryce Young has 1 passing touchdown in his last 3 games, and the Panthers' narrative has been dominated by how good the run game is with Rico Dowdle. Ted has been getting the targets and target share, but there are just too many games without the yardage to support him fantasy-wise if he's not getting touchdowns. And oh, by the way, he only has 2 touchdowns on the season that came in 1 game. The reality is that Bryce Young isn't it, and Andy Dalton was far worse, despite fantasy analysts, not this one, not us, saying it would boost McMillan when Bryce was out. I know Ted is a good player in reality, but it continues to hurt having to start him week after week. Thanks. I love the thanks at the end because I don't think that email sounded very thankful to have McMillan on your fantasy team. Where are you at with Tetairoa McMillan? And I wonder if it's going to be as harsh as I am about to be.
Ooh, it sounds like you might be going total panic or you might be going Coping Corner because I'm going total panic, but I would listen to Coping Corner here. And he pointed it out, right? Like we've only seen that 1 game where he scored the 2 touchdowns. And that was in like the easiest possible matchup against the Cowboys where we all knew he was going to have a good game in that one. Other than that, I mean, it's, 60 yards this week in a game where we weren't even sure if he was going to play on Friday. Like, okay, I'll give him a pass for that. But Bryce Young, yes, he has been extremely shaky. I don't know where this passing attack is going. I don't really see a lot of signs that I feel hopeful that this passing attack is going to get better as the season goes along. So McMillan's doing about as well as he can, and that's making him like a fantasy wide receiver 3. Some weeks he can get up to that wide receiver 2 range. If he finds the end zone, he's just not finding the end zone. This week now, A.J. Terrell and the Falcons. I don't love that. The Rams are up in a couple weeks. He's got a bye still on the way. The Seahawks in the fantasy championship. Like, when are you really going to feel confident starting him? When is he going to have 100+ yards? When is he going to find the end zone next? It's tough to project. And I mean, career-wise, like long-term, I think he's going to be good. Like, I think I've seen enough from him that I think he's going to be a really good pro. And it might be a bit of a Garrett Wilson situation where we're going to have to find him another quarterback at some point. But for 2025, I think it's total panic. And then I think for 2026 and beyond, it's probably no panic for me.
Yeah, just tell me what the quarterback situation looks like, because I think I'm
right.
I think I'm pretty close to I know what Bryce Young is at this stage. McMillan, as TT mentioned, 9th in target share among pass catchers and 2nd in air yard share among pass catchers. I mean, he is getting all of the volume possible, and that is amounting to a player who is 25th in yards per game and has only scored a touchdown in one game where he scored 2. And just tell me, like, what changes here. That's the thing. And beyond just blanket statement, he's in a bad situation with Bryce Young as the quarterback. I found this really interesting from Josh Norris, who follows the Panthers closely. Josh noted that through 10 weeks, Bryce Young, Dave Canales, both is unwilling to throw downfield. Weeks 8 to 18 last year, Bryce Young in the Panthers passing game on 20+ yard throws, ranked 6th in attempt percentage and 2nd in adjusted completion percentage. This year, it's 31st in terms of attempts 20+ yards downfield. And Josh noted that also extends to the intermediate area, so that's 10 to 19 yards, where weeks 8 to 18, they were 3rd in attempt percentage. This year, they're 19th in attempt rate there. And it's just, this is really problematic, especially for Tetairoa McMillan, because honestly, Boone, I think he's having, quietly, I think McMillan is basically having the rookie season that Marvin Harrison Jr. was having last year. Just people care less because the name isn't as big, where he's pretty much only lining up outside on the line of scrimmage. He's purely in an X receiver role. They don't give him a lot of quick hitters and layups, so it's a really long developing route tree, and you got a quarterback. To me, I think this is a quarterback issue. I don't think this is a Dave Canales issue. Unless Dave is just, and I don't know, I'm guessing, unless Dave is in his ear like, do not throw downfield, do not throw downfield. Like, I watch this team and I see the plays open and available. I just see a quarterback who can't hit him and won't take him consistently. I know he had this stretch that he did it last year, but basically every other stretch of Bryce Young's career, he's not been a guy that will or is able to push downfield. So McMillan is stuck in this low percentage X receiver role on a low volume passing game with a quarterback that we don't trust. I didn't trust Kyler Murray last year, even though people liked him better than they like Bryce Young right now. And then that leads to the receiver has to be absolutely perfect. And this is where if we're calling balls and strikes here, and nobody does this because we've all just decided this is all Bryce Young's fault, McMillan has not been perfect at the catch point this year. He's had some drops. He's had some contested catch losses. He had both a drop and a contested catch loss in this last week's game, which, again, that's fine. Every receiver is going to have those plays. But because the opportunities are so limited in this offense, again, he has to be absolutely perfect to hit for fantasy. And it's just tough to expect a rookie to do that. It was tough to expect that of Harrison last year. It's tough to expect that of McMillan this year. So this has nothing to do with McMillan, who I think can be, I don't know if again, we can quibble about what his long-term ceiling is, but right now I think he's a good NFL player. But from a fantasy standpoint, I just think he's in a little bit of a coping corner spot to me based on all of those factors that I considered there, because I just don't really see how they change this up. There's a lot of problems in this offense. I mean, wide receiver 2, Xavier Legette's is a complete nothing burger. I hate to be mean, but there's just nothing going on there. They don't play Coker enough. They don't target him enough. And this is a huge problem, but it starts with, I think, the lack of downfield passing, and their number one receiver is in an X receiver only role with a downfield route tree.
You make a good point. I will come along with you to coping corner on him. So I didn't go for the last one with Jefferson.
I really wanted you to not, though.
I will go for the bump up here. It's a tough one. I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for him, but I will also say this. Their schedule so far, like you look at like his schedule specifically, other than that Cowboys game, they haven't had an easy matchup. There has been no green on that schedule, nothing easy for them. So that could be one area that you look at and you go, okay, well, maybe there'll be some easier matchups, but I laid it out. Like most of the matchups left are kind of scary too. So yeah, I'm willing to go that route because I do think rest of the season here, I just don't know that he's going to have like meaningful performances more often than not that are going to make you excited about having him in your lineup. So yeah, I think we could put him in coping corner because he'll score a touchdown or two the rest of the way. I'm not expecting him to just go off and have, 5 straight games with touchdowns or something like that. So yeah, I think it's just an unfortunate situation for a rookie wide receiver where he's got this kind of bad quarterback situation holding him down. And this whole passing attack just hasn't really got going, which is weird because with the rushing attack having as much success as they've had, you would think they'd be able to build off that. And this year they just really haven't found a way to do that.
Especially the downfield passing game. You'd think that's exactly what would be able
100%.
to happen. But yeah, this is the most risky. I think if we agree and we're going to put him in the coping corner, I think this is the most risky one just because he's a rookie who I don't think is playing poorly. I mean, again, there's some mistakes here, but I don't think he's playing poorly. It's just, it's these like 60-yard games every week. It's not going to kill you to start him in fantasy as a wide receiver 3, but he was drafted to be much more than that. And I just think that was ultimately overly aggressive. Like that's the bottom line here.
If you look at the names that we've put in coping corner, like I think, I have some fondness for Kenneth Walker. Obviously, I think he could be a really good player in the right situation. But if you look at all the names, like I think McMillan at this stage of everyone's career, probably the most talented. Like I think so. That's why it hurts putting him in there because you could see so many other paths for him where he ended up having a monster rookie season where he has double-digit touchdowns and he ends up being this difference maker along the way for you. And yet in his current situation, I don't think it's going to happen. So that's why I'm willing to concede that let's do coping corner.
I hate it. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Dominic V sends this one in. Harmon asked for some extra submissions, so I'll make sure you guys aren't any more panicked than I am. Gino is effing washed, and I know Brock Bowers had an amazing season with backup Aiden O'Connell, but I'm worried the teams are just going to hyper-focus on Bowers now that Jacoby's gone, and his ceiling won't be what I drafted him to be. From a concerned Bowers, Gadsden, and Kraft, Kraft bro here. Panic level for Brock Bowers after that disaster of a game on Thursday night, Justin Boone.
I mean, can we go more than some panic? I don't know that we can for this one. And part of it's like the caliber of player. Part of it that's like, what did he do just a week past? Like a week ago, it was 127 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he was the toast of the town. And now everyone's freaking out. And yes, Jacoby Myers left, but like not that much changed, right? So perhaps there's going to be some ups and some downs here for Brock, maybe, more than we saw last year. And maybe that's just a fact that the entire offense kind of doesn't really seem to be clicking and, hitting on the same cylinder. But what I do have questions about for him is I think he's going to go out this week. They get the Cowboys. He'll beat up on the Cowboys. He'll have a good game. Everybody does, right? But then after that, you look at the schedule from week 12 on, and it's Browns and it's Chargers, Broncos, Eagles, Texans. Like this is very, very scary, I think, for that Raiders offense as a whole. And Bowers is the kind of player that it can be matchup proof, that you're going to start regardless, because what else are you going to do, right? Like this is one of those situations where there's nobody you got on the waiver wire that you're going to start over Bowers. Even if you got Orande Gadsden, now he's banged up, right? We're going to talk about him in a second. So you're not going to sit Bowers unless you somehow have Trey McBride as well. And that's just not a realistic scenario that's going to happen on any fantasy team. So you have to play him. And if you're worried about the schedule that I'm pointing out here, maybe you could try to trade him, but you just have to think about what your options are. Like, what do you have that's either on your roster that's going to take over your starting tight end spot, or what are you going to get back in a trade that's going to give you anything near what Bowers could give you, which, like I said, a week ago was 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, tight ends just can't do that. There's like a handful of guys that have that even remote possibility that they could reach that kind of level in a given week. So it's just some panic for me. The offense as a whole, absolute disaster. But Bowers himself, we're still going to see some really big games out of him.
Yeah, if you just pretend that instead of he got all of those points in week 9 and then none of those points in week 10, if you just pretend that he got half of them in week 9 and half of them in week 10, it probably makes you feel a little bit better. But oh man, I mean, I would love to put the whole Raiders offense in corner because I think it is just that bad. I think Chip Kelly he's going to be around for 2 months. 2 more months he's going to hold this job, if that, and then he is out of there. He's done. Ashton Genty's running back 16 in points per game. He's been kind of a small loss player. He's not crushing you, but a small loss player. I think Bowers, just relative to the fact that he went alongside Trey McBride, who now is having like a wide receiver 1 season, but that took a change in quarterback to get there. I think I'm not saying he's going to be a small loss player. He did go very, very high. So I'm with you that ultimately it's some panic, but man, that schedule is brutal. That schedule is pretty intimidating considering just all the other things that are going so poorly for this offense.
Yeah, and it would just come down to what could you get in a trade for Bowers. If you find somebody in your league that is super excited and you can move him and you do have that other tight end option and you could get something else in return that's really, really good, okay. But he is still one of those players that has the massive ceiling, and I would have a very hard time trading him away, even though we mentioned these many times. Like, this is one of those spots where, like, you have Bowers on your team. You don't watch the Raiders games, though. We don't need to watch these games. We'll let that offense go out there and do what they do. And you just hope that at the end of the day, he's got 90 yards and a touchdown.
It was just unfortunate that it happened on Thursday Night Football. So we had to, well, I mean, I guess you don't have to watch it. One of our producers, Jason Jung, is a Raiders fan. He doesn't even watch the Raiders games. So that's where we're at with the Raiders. But week 11, Dallas Cowboys matchup. This is probably going to be a Brock Bowers spike week. So if you want to get out on the Bowers stuff, do it after this week. Sell high after this week before that schedule comes that Justin Boone just highlighted here. Last one we'll take in this section. This comes in from Doug. Hey, Matt and Justin, love the show. I'm hoping there's some decent tight end options on the waiver wire segment today because both my tight ends, Dalton Kincaid and Orande Gadsden, got injured yesterday after not putting up a lot of points. I know the position is up and down, but Gadsden in particular seemed to be having a poor game before he got hurt. Is this a concerning trend without Joe Alt, or should he be fine if he is healthy? Thanks. Couple updates here. Number one, Gadsden is considered day-to-day. Dalton Kincaid is more week-to-week here. By the way, your Bills signed McCole Hardman to the practice squad as we were taping, so they're just overloaded on speed receivers who are like gadget guys. Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore. I think at times in their careers, maybe those guys could have been more. McCole Hardman, I never considered to be one of those guys. So there's one more receiver thing to talk about with the Buffalo Bills. God, what a weird room. Okay, what's the panic level on these two tight ends?
I saw the Hardman thing come up earlier, and I considered mentioning it, and I was like, no, he's not a big enough name. We're not going to bring that up on the show. There's no way. I'm glad you did, though.
Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, when we're looking at these tight ends, I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid. I think it's total panic, and you said it. It's week to week, but it's also a player who we've seen kind of get his seasons derailed by injuries in the past and come back and maybe not necessarily be the same player. So that's what I'm really scared about here. It's also like, when you talk about those kind of injuries, like he could come back, he could aggravate it. We don't know how long he's going to be out. When they say week to week, that could mean a few weeks. That could mean next week. We really, really don't know here. So that adds to some uncertainty with his fantasy profile. So all of those things scare me about him. With Gadsden, it's no panic for me because in this game, I know it wasn't his best game by any means. He still had 6 targets, right? And that's the kind of volume he was seeing in the weeks prior. Like in the 2 weeks before that, he had 5 targets in one game, caught all of them for 77 yards and a touchdown. And then the other game, 5 targets, caught all of them for 68 yards. So this was a down game. He got banged up in it. I'm just chalking it up to that. I still think he is going to have some good performances. The only thing I question with him is, yes, it doesn't seem like it's super serious, just a contusion day to day, all that sort of stuff. They have a bye in week 12 though. So if it is kind of bothering him, could we see them sit him down and potentially bring him back after the bye? That would be the only thing that would factor in there for me. But as long as he's back this week, or if he is back after the bye, as long as he's healthy, I think Gadsden's going to have a strong finish to the year. So no panic on him. But Kincaid, I think this is definitely worrisome. And there was always a little bit of worry in his profile. We brought it up many times, like the way that he's used in the offense and some of the questions about whether he could keep up the touchdown scoring and all those sorts of things. Now we're throwing this injury into it, and that scares me.
Yeah, I totally hear your point on Dalton Kincaid. On Gadsden, I'm with you. No panic from me either. Could maybe miss a week, but the fact that they've got that bye coming up, I think on the other side of it, he should be locked and loaded for a good run to the playoffs. Mentioned the Joe Alt injury in the email. Number one, we can't do the whole he was having a poor game before he got hurt. You just, if a guy gets hurt, you never know what's going to happen in the rest of the game. Like, there's a chance Gadsden could have scored a touchdown late in the game, and we're not even having this conversation. So that, to me, doesn't really matter. You're right. The fact that he got 6 targets, ran a route on 72% of the dropbacks, targeted on 33% of his routes, that's what matters. And Justin Herbert was getting the ball out so fast, 2.2 time to throw in that game overall. That was clearly their answer to the Joe Alt injuries. We're going to do a lot of quick game. We're going to get the ball in the playmaker's hands. And Gadsden is a guy that can make plays after the catch. Didn't do it in this game, but we've seen in previous games, dump it off in the flat, and he can kind of run with the ball in his hands. Bunch of screens to Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey getting going on quick hitting routes and obviously doing his thing with the ball in his hands. So I think that's what we will see with this team overall going forward. So I think Gadsden can still pile up a lot of production doing that.
Yeah, now I'm going to sit here for the next few days and think about like trades that people could make if you did want to get off Brock Bowers. Like, could you get Gadsden and a piece? And there's some worry about Gadsden's profile with the injury, even though you and I don't seem to be that concerned. Could you potentially get him, who's a mid-range tight end 1 and another starter on your team for Bowers and a lower level piece? Like, those would be some interesting things. I'll see if I can work that into my buy and sell column on Wednesday.
I like that. Make sure you're reading that column every single week because we are reading again in 2025. I've only got a few, like a month and a half left to say that. So we'll see if we're reading again in 2026, but we're definitely reading again in 2025. All right. On that note, we will take our first quick break. When we come back, we'll continue to run through more submissions to the People's Panic Meter. We'll get into that right after this. All right, we're back. We're continuing to run through your submissions to the People's Panic Meter. Let's get to this one from Ali or Ali B. Hi, Matt. This is a weird one because he just keeps scoring touchdowns, but the internet has really wanted me to panic about Mark Andrews for months, citing everything from route rates to age to his expiring contract. I get the touchdowns aren't good metrics for being statistically predictive, but is there a point where a guy scoring touchdowns is consistent enough to maybe indicate that there is a systemic plan behind it? Should I panic about the fact that I'm not panicked about Mark Andrews? For dynasty purposes, is there something about his skill set that could have a hard time translating to another system if he ever left Baltimore? Thanks for all you do. I love this in that the messenger is being gaslit to panic about Mark Andrews, even though he's been useful for fantasy this year. So what's your level of concern for Mark Andrews as he just continues to score touchdowns?
I'm torn on this one. Like, to me, it has to be total panic. And yet I feel like my argument doesn't lean that way. Like, my argument probably leans more towards some panic, but it's just so hard to trust a guy who hasn't topped 35 yards in 8 of his 9 games this year, Harmon. And I know a bunch of those, he didn't have Lamar Jackson, so we can chalk up a ton of those to the quarterback situation and the offense being different, but he's the ultimate touchdown or bust gambit, right? And if you just look at Lamar Jackson's full games, we have 5 games where Lamar Jackson played the full contest. 5 touchdowns in those games for Mark Andrews. Like, he does score TDs with Lamar Jackson at a pretty crazy rate. And we saw something last year too, where early in the season didn't have great stats and then just started scoring touchdowns and did not stop the rest of the year. So he can be like that low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2 touchdown or bust type player for you. And it just goes back to the other conversations we had about tight ends today. Like, what are your other options? Who else are you getting? Who's on the waiver wire? We're going to talk about a bunch of guys later when we get to the waiver wire section, guys who are also in that low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2 kind of area who you could consider over him depending on the matchup. And yet you're not getting anything for him on the trade market. So it just comes down to what your options are and whether you're willing to pay him or whether you're willing to play him. And for me, I think you have to go total panic based on the yardage, but it's not the type of tight end I want to have on my team. I guess that's where I keep coming back to. And yet at the same time, he's still getting it done.
16 touchdowns in his last regular 18 season games with Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews. And yeah, I think you're right. He's a touchdown or bust guy. So in a weird way, I almost have no panic about this because that's what I expect him to be. Like, he's not Mark Andrews from a few years ago.
20 yards, 30 yards, like, that's rough to live on that when he's doing it every single week pretty much.
I don't really know what the Ravens are weird right now. They got to get something else going in the passing game in a bizarre way. Like, they have Zay Flowers. That's nice. I just feel like we haven't seen the fully formed version of the Ravens yet. Rashad Bateman will pop up for a play here and there. Mark Andrews is going to score touchdowns. Isaiah Likely hasn't done much so far. DeAndre Hopkins was doing a couple of performative go routes per game, and that was kind of it. It's a bit of a strange situation where they just haven't really needed to come to life yet fully as an offense, because okay, you beat the Dolphins, that's easy. They didn't have to do much to beat the Vikings. Ultimately, they weren't like in a big back and forth game. But even dating back to earlier in the season, I kind of felt this way a little bit outside of that Lions game where we saw some good moments from other players in the unit. So again, I would just like to see more from some of these guys, but I just don't think Andrews is going to be anything more than just a touchdown or bust player in fantasy.
And there was mention of dynasty there. Like, I do think that he's reached another phase in his career where we also have to think about the Isaiah Likely of it all. And will Isaiah Likely start to eat into his work more, eat into his targets? We've discussed on this show whether that was a possibility, and we both kind of thought at the time that that is something that could happen the rest of the season. So keep that in mind as well. But for dynasty, I don't think he's going to go anywhere else and have success. Like, I just don't think he's at a point in his career, and I don't think he's the kind of player now where he's going to go to another team in future years and have great fantasy seasons. I don't think he's going to be more than what we're seeing right now, which again is that touchdown or bust kind of fantasy option.
No, I mean, this team, speaking of the expiring contract stuff, this team was comfortable if they had ended up trading him in the offseason. That's where he's at this point. And he's back, though, of course, because just nothing really materialized there. But I think that will be a conversation once again this offseason. And I'm not sure he's going to go somewhere else and immediately be some kind of starting tight end at this point in his career. It feels like those days have kind of passed him by. All right, next one up here comes in from Luis on the Chargers. Chargers are 7-3 with what seems like a roller coaster of a season, more than the record indicates. Big wins and some bad losses. What I'm worried about is the offensive line. I firmly believe Herbert would have unquestionable MVP-worthy stats if his line was delivering even a top 20 performance, but instead they're absolutely abysmal. How panicked should I be for a 7-3 team with no one good at offensive line? What should I expect from Herbert? What should I expect from the receivers? Thanks. Love the show. I'll go on this one first here, Boone. I only have some panic on this because I like, as I mentioned in the Gadsden section before the break, I like the plan that they put out on offense, which is get the ball out quick, let the playmakers that can do something with the ball in their hands, which is Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and then Gadsden. Maybe not in that order, but Ladd definitely number one. Let those guys cook. I think when Amari and Hampton gets back after the bye, he'll be able to some of the swing passes and what we saw from him as a receiver, he'll be able to be a part of it. I think, yes, the ceiling would have been higher if Joe Alt was out there. Ray Garvin shared the stats with us last week on the data dump. Those splits are pretty extreme. But I think in this new world without Joe Alt, to me, I think they have the plan to get by, and Ladd McConkey is still a wide receiver 1, maybe high end 2 if you want to quibble it, but he's been great ever since week 5. Herbert, I think, can survive as a QB1, but not going to have, again, that same high ceiling. And then, QJ will be up and down. Gadsden's a tight end 1. I think we're okay with where this thing is right now.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything you said there. QJ, to get more specific, like I'm valuing him as a wide receiver 3 flex option, a guy that you'd like to see find the end zone to come through for you. Gadsden, like that mid-range tight end 1, but like not impossible that he has the kind of weeks that could put him up into the elite range with those guys. And then Keenan Allen's the one that we've talked about before that he's just kind of fallen off now. He's somebody that you could play as a flex, but not really going to be happy about it. But overall, yeah, I think this offense in real life, I think there's a little more panic potentially that with this offensive line being in the state that it is, that in terms of them being contenders, it's a real problem. But fantasy wise, it would only be some panic for me as well, because I think those guys can still produce. And I think with the backs too, we saw Kamani Vidal go out and have a decent game, and we don't know when Hampton is going to come back, but eventually when he gets back out there, I think he'll be able to produce like he was earlier in the season.
All right, next one in comes from Kenny B. Hey guys, first and foremost, I love and appreciate all the work you do. I do have a few concerns about some players and wanted to get your thoughts. What is going on with Courtland Sutton right now? Boone, The Troy Franklin outscoring Courtland Sutton trend continues. What is your level of concern on the Broncos' theoretical number one wide receiver?
It's total panic. I definitely considered coping corner for this one though, because it hasn't been great. And he is their number one guy. He's going to get more attention from defenses. You know, the offense is just going to go elsewhere at times, and he's still been productive. There's a few of these receivers that we've talked about over the panic meter weeks where it's like, are they doing nothing? Or are they putting up okay numbers, just people aren't really happy about it because they're not putting up the same kind of numbers they were in past years or even earlier in the season? And Sutton's the kind of guy that we're not seeing the same production that we saw in the first month, and yet he's still been fairly productive. Like in his last 4 games, 87 yards, 67 yards, 30 in a TD, and then, of course, the stinker this week with 24 yards. But we're not seeing 80 in a touchdown. We're not seeing 100 in a touchdown. And yes, other guys in the offense are coming on here. So I'm saying total panic, but I would listen to an argument for coping corner.
Yeah, my only argument for the coping corner is that I think just with where he is from an alignment perspective, it's just so easy to take him out of the game because he only lines up at X. He doesn't move around. All these other guys are, you know, Marvin Mims is a fake receiver. Troy Franklin is kind of a slot speed screen guy. Pat Bryant is a big slot. Evan Ingram is kind of a move tight end. So it's just, he has to line up in one spot. And so there's no motion there. You can hard double that guy. You can press that guy. And then you have a really erratic quarterback behind center. So he's in that same bucket of like Tetairoa McMillan, of Marvin Harrison. And I think Bo Nix is an erratic quarterback at this point. To me, I just always balked at the idea that Sutton was sort of this steady Eddie producer at the position. I think he's much more volatile than that as a player and from just the alignment in this offense perspective. So I'm not surprised that we've reached a valley in his production, but I do think another peak can come up here pretty soon, because what I actually don't think has happened here is that Troy Franklin has jumped to him to be the number one receiver in this offense. They just think that Troy Franklin's role is a little bit easier to get him the football right now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I will also throw out a little stat here. He's playing the Chiefs this week. He's got touchdowns in 4 straight games against the Chiefs. And unlike McMillan, Sutton has found the end zone this year, right? So I do have a little more faith that he could salvage some performances like that 30-yard game that I mentioned, where he comes through with a touchdown and it ends up being an okay fantasy day. And it's not just like the 60 yards from McMillan and that's all you get. So I'm still holding strong here. I think it's a total panic. I do think it's borderline coping corner, but for me, I'm not pushing him over the top yet because I think it's going to ebb and flow in this offense, and I do think it's going to come back around his way before the end of the season.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I have to say let's hold off on coping corner as well and keep him as a total panic guy. Here's the deal. If you thought he was an every week metronome wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 1 for your fantasy team, I think it is time to totally panic about that and readjust your expectations. But I don't want to paint it as I'm kind of finding the middle ground between that and, oh my God, he's lost his job to Troy Franklin, which I think that seems to have been the tenor of his fantasy season. I think it's somewhere in the middle here, which, yeah, that settles on total panic for me. Okay, next one in comes from Ethan, who says, is it time to give up on Trevor Lawrence? I'm relying on him in a Superflex league where oftentimes streaming tight ends outscore him. And even when the offense puts up points, he's causing just as many problems as he's solving. I want to give Lawrence more time with Liam Cohen before fully shutting the door, but it's getting harder and harder to believe that he's even going to be a top 16 quarterback. And this, the promise of T-Law was supposed to be when he was drafted, feels long forgotten. Would it not just be easier to put the Jags in the coping corner and worry about them next year? Boone, what do you want to do with Trevor Lawrence here?
Man, this one might look foolish. Like if we get Travis Hunter back before the end of the season, if BTJ gets healthy, if Jacoby Myers gets up to speed, and, you know, Brenton Strange could be back at tight end soon. They opened up his 21-day window. So if we get all these guys back, we get all these guys up to speed, and this offense could potentially start humming. And yet right now, like, I just don't think Trevor Lawrence is a good fantasy quarterback. Like, what have we seen from him? What do we have to like hang our hat on for this guy? He's got 1 or no touchdown passes in 7 of his 9 games this year, man. He's only top 25 rushing yards in 2 games. So he's not even, that's part of his profile. He's not even getting it done with his legs most weeks. I just don't know what you can look to. I'm going coping corner. I think there's a possibility that later in the season, we get all these guys healthy and this offense starts to find its way with Liam Cohen. And yet right now, I just haven't seen anything from Trevor Lawrence to make me happy about putting him in my lineup. And for me to put him as anything like in my rankings, I don't know 100% for sure. I haven't gone back and looked at this, but I can't imagine I've had him higher than like quarterback 15 all year. Like he's just not somebody that you're excited about for fantasy. So it's Coping Corner for me.
No, yeah. I totally agree with you. Coping Corner. I actually don't feel all that strongly that this one could burn us at all here by putting him in the Coping Corner. Just maybe he finishes the season strongly, but there's just a lot in Jacksonville right now. It just feels like this team needs an off season. Get it sorted. And I don't know if that's going to help Trevor Lawrence, honestly. It's the second year in the system. That could be great, but from a fantasy perspective, I don't feel bad about this one at all. I don't think he's a good fantasy quarterback, and for a variety of reasons at this point. We're talking about Jacoby Myers fresh off the plane, Parker Washington are like the top receivers here. So yeah, I feel pretty good about putting him in the Coping Corner here. All right, last one we have time to get to today. Once again, you guys have brought it. Love this. All of these emails have been great. Unfortunately, couldn't get to them all today. Garrett J sends in this email on Bucky Irving. He hasn't played since week 4, and he still isn't taking hits or logged any sort of limited practice. Todd Bowles came out to say that there is no timetable for him to return. He said the concern is still the shoulder. Twitter doctors, in quotes, good work there, Garrett, have really started to sound the alarm on him in the past week or so with him not returning out of the bye. I've also seen concern about when he does come back about possible instability with the shoulder and re-injury risk. I've shopped him around and I could sell, but it would be at a considerable discount. Are you taking a haircut trying to sell him, or are we going down with the ship? Ironic considering it's the 50th anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald sinking. All right. Love to see that. Damn. Bucky Irving, what is our level of concern on Bucky Irving right now?
I'm going Coping Corner with Bucky Irving. And the way that you've explained Coping Corner to me is like, I don't want to talk about this guy anymore. I don't want to hear about this guy. And yet we could bring him back if the situation changes. So when we hear some sort of update about a timeline for him to get back, we could reconsider this. But right now, it really scares me that at the beginning of every week, they don't even like wait till the end of the week to rule him out. At the beginning of every week, there's like, yeah, him and Chris Godwin aren't playing. Don't even talk about it. It's over. So at some point, I hope these guys are going to be back,
true.
and yet we don't know when that's going to be. It could be still weeks from now. So yeah, it's Coping Corner until we get an update on his recovery timeline. I don't think there's any reason to discuss him.
Yeah, I think that's right. I will just say on the selling him part of this, I think I would just hold him and see what happens. I don't think I would sell him here because they so clearly need him. Rachaad White hasn't done anything to earn carries long term. Sean Tucker's a nice player, but I mean, when he's back, he should be good. I will just say I have Bucky Irving on one fantasy team. Shout out to me. It's a really good team. I'm number 1 in the league. I'm 14-4 right now, but I'm going to lose the head-to-head matchup. I might win the median matchup this week. And I just keep forgetting that Bucky Irving is on this team because he's been in the IR spot forever. And I just haven't thought about him. And like, good Lord, I need him. I need him. I got like Alvin Kamara and David Montgomery and Travis Etienne at running back. I need him to come back. My flex players, Keenan Allen, scoring 3 points this week. Enough already with these guys. I need Bucky Irving to come back, or else I'm going to be in the Coping Corner for what I think might be one of my best teams this year.
Let me make one more point before we throw to break here too. When he got injured initially, we only thought he was going to be out for a couple games at that point. One of the things we said was that Rachaad White is going to be the backup and he's going to take over and he'll be the immediate starter. And yet if this thing goes on for the rest of the season and we don't see Bucky Irving, there's a chance that Sean Tucker could eventually usurp Rachaad White. And I think we're getting to that point now. If we don't get Bucky Irving back soon, they're starting to give Sean Tucker a little more work. I think he's a really good runner. We've seen him produce in limited opportunities in past years. I think he's a guy to go out there and potentially stash in case this Bucky Irving thing continues, as a guy who could maybe take over this backfield and do something with it in that role.
I think that's a great call. And yeah, we saw it last week. Yesterday, he got some good carries in there. Rashad White didn't really. I think Tucker is interesting, so he's a nice stash candidate. I don't think we're talking about him when we get to the waiver wire, but that's a really good call out there. So good analysis from Boone there. Again, my take on Bucky Irving is don't try to trade him. Just keep him on your team. I guess if you can get something good, sure, but I would just try to hold him and see what happens here because everybody else has access to the internet. They know he's not hurt, and they know he gets ruled out on freaking Tuesday, seemingly every single week. My two favorite notifications in the world right now: Bucky Irving ruled out on damn Tuesday, and then Ricky Pearsall. We're hoping he practices on Tuesday, and then by Friday, Ricky Pearsall, knee ruled out. Those are my two favorite notifications to get on a weekly basis here. Okay, so this is the state of the coping corner before we toss to break. Out TreVeyon Henderson. We added Trevor Lawrence, Bucky Irving, and Tetairoa McMillan. I am really nervous about the McMillan ad there, just from a talent perspective, but I feel good ultimately about our reasons. So feel free to screenshot and dunk on us, hopefully in a couple weeks when T-Mac has a big game here or there. All right, we're going to throw it a break. When we come back, it is time to run through the waiver wire heading into week 11. We'll get into that right after this. Please. All right, we're back. It's time for our waiver wire segment. We go position by position. Justin Boone hands over his best options at each spot. Let's talk quarterbacks here heading into week 11.
All right. It's the usual four we're going to hit on every time. For quarterbacks, Joe Flacco
Seriously.
at the Steelers, Marcus Mariota at the Dolphins, J.J. McCarthy versus the Bears, Aaron Rodgers versus the Bengals. We're kind of limited here, right? Like I'm throwing in a couple guys that are just over the 50% mark, which I normally use as the cutoff. Throwing them in there just because they are out there in some leagues. If we're talking about like streamer types, they might be out there. So want to talk about those guys as well. Now with Flacco, we hit on the news off the top that we're going to hear whether Joe Burrow is going to return or not, potentially. It seems like he wants week 13. It could be week 14. Either way, he's going to be back by the end of the season, it seems now. So if Burrow comes back, that'll obviously take some steam out of Joe Flacco's outlook the rest of the way. That turns him into just a streamer type for the next few weeks. And yet still, the guy's been crushing it for fantasy. So obviously, we want to go out and pick him up and potentially play him. So keep him in mind. Like I said, over the 50% rostered mark, but multiple touchdowns in every game that he started for the Bengals. 342 and 3 touchdowns against the Steelers in week 7. He's playing the Steelers this week. But I will also say Joe Burrow's not on this list, but because I put a couple guys that were over the 50% mark, he's only 58% rostered last time I checked. So you could potentially go out and get Burrow in some leagues. If he were out there, he would be the number one quarterback at Marcus Mariota. Now we're back to talking about like streamer types, and Jaden Daniels not going to need surgery on the elbow. He's avoided getting placed on IR. Unfortunately, I mean, the Commanders are 3-7. I think they're going to fall out of the playoff hopes here if they haven't already. So does that mean that he is going to stay away from the team? Because they've said like he's not on IR yet kind of thing, right? Like we might still decide to just throw him on IR. And Mariota continues to produce. He's averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game in his last 6 contests where he's taken the field for at least 50% of the snaps for the Commanders. The Dolphins defense, they've had some mixed results recently, but on the season, still a top 10 matchup for fantasy QBs. So you can continue to look at Mariota as that, high-end QB2 who could potentially give you low-end QB1 numbers. J.J. McCarthy, probably don't have to spend too much time here. We've said it all. And yet just remember, he's a young guy. He only has had 4 starts in the NFL. He's shown some value with his legs. That's great for fantasy. Could it potentially come together at some point? I think it could. I mean, at least 25 rushing yards and or a touchdown in every single game. And then this most recent game, 48 rushing yards. It's not that they're like designing a ton of runs for him. He's not that kind of quarterback, but he can scramble. He can pick up yards with his legs. And you got to factor that in when you're looking at fantasy. And I mentioned earlier, very soft schedule later in the season, which I think will come into play for him. And then Aaron Rodgers, the matchup with the Bengals is just so good that, yes, we can consider Aaron Rodgers when the matchups are great. And this one, last time he played him, 4 passing touchdowns. He was a top 7 fantasy QB that week. So you could look to him again here in a game that's very high scoring, projected for 50.5 points in this one. I think we could see another potential shootout between these two teams. So Rodgers is a guy that you could look at just as a QB2 streamer. We're not getting crazy.
Yeah, it's the tight end only offense going against the team that gives up a bunch of production to tight ends. So I do think that Aaron Rodgers on the streaming radar. Can I make a case for Michael Penix as a streaming quarterback? I mean, you got to be in a pretty tough spot, but if you're dealing with one of these quarterback injuries, Michael Penix obviously hasn't been great this year. They got blown out by the Panthers the last time they played, but this one is at home, indoors in Atlanta, and at least while Penix hasn't been great, the offense is funneling everything through Drake London right now. So I do that. And obviously, Tyler Shuck carved up this Panthers defense just this past week. So again, if you're ultra desperate, and just to throw out a different name that we don't talk about every week in the streaming quarterback section, I just make the mild case for Michael Penix there.
Yeah, it's been a while since Michael Penix has made it here. And yeah, we'll see what happens in that game. But in the running back section here, there could be a guy that just vultures all the touchdowns from this offense, and Michael Penix can't get it done. And that guy is Tyler Algier, right? Tyler Algier going against the Panthers. It's the kind of matchup for him where he could potentially come through for fantasy. So let's talk about 4 running backs. Tajay Spears going up against the Texans. Blake Corum versus the Seahawks. Amari Demercado versus the 49ers. And then Tyler Algier versus the Panthers. And yes, Harmon, this is not a great week for waiver wire running backs. There's not that guy out there where we can just throw in and, now he's an RB2 in your lineup. Not so much. We're kind of growing after flex plays here and hoping we can find something that, maybe turns into a real fantasy asset as we go. And Tajay Spears is a name that we've brought up many, many times, right? You think back to last season and how he finished things last year, just a huge fantasy playoffs for him. Could he do something like that again? I mean, Tony Pollard does not seem to be the answer there. Tony Pollard snaps going down. Tajay Spears outsnapped him in 2 of the last 3, outproduced him in 3 of the last 4. So could we see that just continue to happen? I think it's possible. You're never going to feel great about having these guys in your lineup, basically anybody in the Titans offense. And yet Tajay Spears is a flex option and somebody that you could consider in a pinch. Blake Corum. I mean, Kyren Williams is no doubt the lead back for the Rams. There's no question about that. And yet that role, his role's decreased a little bit because they've gotten Blake Corum more involved. At least 13 touches each of the last 2 games for Blake Corum. Put up 58 yards on the Saints, 56 yards on the Niners this past week. And this past week played a season high 39% of the snaps. And I'm not suggesting that he is going to take over this job or even turn this into like a 50-50 backfield, but you can certainly start Corum as an RB3 flex option, especially in good matchups. And then we know with a lot of these guys that I'm talking about, they're one injury away, right? Like if that starter goes down, all of a sudden Blake Corum would be a fantastic play. Running backs and Sean McVay offenses, they tend to be pretty good for fantasy. So if Kyren Williams were out, Blake Corum would be an awesome pickup and the kind of guy that we'd be emptying our budgets to try to get. So why not go out and get him now? Why is he only 11% rostered, Harmon? It's one of the biggest things that we ask every single week when we talk about the waiver wire. It doesn't make any sense. One of the best backup RBs out there. Amari Demercado. So this one's interesting. Trey Benson is another one of these backs where we just haven't heard much of an update. I didn't see anything today about him yet. Is he going to come back soon? Last week, he had the chance. He could have potentially come back if they wanted to activate him, and yet they didn't. And we haven't heard an updated timeline for when he's going to return. And in his absence, we've seen a few different backs step up, but Demercado's turned into like an RB3 flex option here, only playing around 40% of the snaps, but 14 carries for 78 yards in week 9, 7 touches for 104 yards this past week. And he's been a decent flex option. I think he can continue to do that. Bam Knight got banged up in this one. He's dealing with an ankle injury. We'll see if he could play in week 11 or not. But if Benson's not back, Demercado's someone you could put in your lineup. And then Tyler Algier, like we said, right? He's out here vulturing touchdowns, 6 touchdowns in 9 games for a guy playing a limited role in that backfield. It's strange to see. I don't think we need to get too crazy about worrying about him infringing upon Bijan Robinson. Like Bijan's still going to get his. There's just a little thorn in his side. And the odd time Algier is going to come out and put up a decent day, it's normally because he finds the end zone once or twice and not because he's putting up huge yardage totals. And yet Algier now in that conversation as somebody that you could play as a touchdown or bust flex.
Oh yeah, and he's good. Like that's the problem for the Bijan bros is that he's good. Like and he deserves those carries that he's getting, especially around the goal line. So I don't think there's anything changing there. And yeah, just to echo your point on Blake Corum, 11% rostered. come on, he's playable. And if anything happened to Kyron Williams, he would immediately be a high-end fantasy starter. So to me, the way I manage my teams at this time of the year, unless I'm just really, really hurting, I'm going to let somebody else pick up the Tajay Spears and the Amari, like spin the wheel on this week's Cardinals running back and just grab a Blake Corum and just take what goes there, because the upside is much higher on those pieces. And I feel like based on what you said there, you probably agree with that. So, all right, those are the running backs. Not that exciting of a section. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got wide receivers and tight ends, and including a deep sleeper that's really interesting. We're going to get into that right after this. All right, we're back. We're landing the plane here in the waiver wire section. We're talking through wide receivers, tight ends, and our deep sleeper. Boone, hit us with the wide receivers to add heading into week 11.
I know this is your favorite part of every Monday show. You always want to talk about the receivers. So it's a little more exciting, this group, compared to what we talked about at quarterbacks and running backs this week too. So I wouldn't fault you for wanting to talk about these wideouts. But Troy Franklin, who we already mentioned when we went over Courtland Sutton, he's going against the Chiefs. Alec Pierce, he's on bye, but man, has he been fantastic lately. Tez Johnson against my Bills. He's also been playing pretty well, filling in for some injured guys. And Jaden Higgins versus the Titans. Harmon, we finally saw the rookie wideouts start to maybe make their move, just get a little more work in that Houston offense. But let's talk through these guys. The Troy Franklin thing, we don't need to spend too much time on because he's been mentioned in the waiver wire column a whole bunch. We've talked about him on this show, but the usage has increased. He's getting more opportunities. The targets have followed suit. At least 8 targets in each of his last 4 games. Touchdowns in 3 of the past 4. He's playing well. He's an upside wide receiver 3 now for fantasy. Alec Pierce, though. So in his last 7 games here, Harmon, he's gone for 67 yards or more on 6 different occasions. And the recent outings have been so impressive. The stat lines: 5 for 98, 2 for 69, 6 for 115, 4 for 84, and a touchdown. He has become a high-end wide receiver 3 who legitimately has wide receiver 2 fantasy potential every single week. He is in one of the league's best offenses right now. We've recommended him as a cheap way to invest in the Colts attack. I don't think that discount's there anymore. There's no way you're getting this guy cheap. Yeah. People know now if he is still on the waiver wire, you're going to have to pay up to get him. And I think you probably should. It probably makes sense. It's a guy that you should be investing in. I think he can keep this up certainly the rest of the year. So he's somebody you should be very excited to go out and grab. Tez Johnson, I mean, it goes back to the injuries, like I said, right? And when are we going to get Chris Godwin back? When is Mike Evans going to come back? It might not be for a while on either of those guys. So Tez Johnson's been getting it done. 20 targets over his past 3 outings, at least 40 yards in 5 straight appearances here. 4 touchdowns over his last 4 games. There's nice production here. It's not week winning production, but it's nice production that you could slide into your flex spot. So definitely consider him for your fantasy lineup. And then this is the one that I'm sure you have something to say, Harmon, because we have wondered if the Texans rookie wideouts were going to get worked in more. There's been some moments when they've popped up. It's often been with other guys injured. And yet now, is this the time that we're starting to see it change, right? Both rookies, little more work this week. We saw guys like Xavier Hutchinson in the past, and back earlier in the season, Braxton Berrios and Justin Watson. These guys were all playing ahead of them. This week, Xavier Hutchinson snaps came down a bit. Even Christian Kirk snaps came down a bit, and we saw that open the door for Higgins. 7 targets, Noel 4 targets, 42 and a TD for Higgins, 35 for Jalen Noel. I think both these guys have a chance to potentially emerge the rest of the way. And this offense needs something more. They need to find some guys that have some juice that can kind of, inject something into this passing attack. CJ Stroud hopefully will be back this week. He's still in concussion protocol, but let's hope that he gets cleared. Either way, I think these are deeper stashes, not necessarily guys you're going to put right in your lineup, but players that we think have some talent and could potentially emerge the rest of the way. And I always like to mention somebody in each section that's, available in a lot of leagues, like 80% of plus leagues. This is the case with both these guys. You can still get these guys on your roster. I would go out and try to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Alec Pierce I feel like I've been talking about him for weeks and weeks and weeks now. Weeks and weeks that his role has really changed. And I think he's a guy that you can credibly start every single week. Now, I push back on the idea that he's suddenly the wide receiver 1 here. I think it's still going to be a moving target, and I think everybody will have their roles in this passing game, and it's just going to be a little bit week by week with these guys. That was the perfect matchup for Pierce, as I highlighted, the single high stuff for him, but that doesn't mean like Pittman's done or Downs is done. Those guys are going to have their moments as well. Obviously, Tyler Warren, nice game as well. The last two are interesting. Tez Johnson, I think you summed that up perfectly. Not a league winner or anything, but perfectly credible wide receiver 3 guy that you can stick into your lineup because I don't know when Chris Godwin's coming back. Jaden Higgins, I want to get excited about these Texans rookie receivers, but I just have been burned by this team a little bit too much. Now, in the backfield, we did see a real flip over to Woody Marks as the clear lead back. We've also seen that yo-yo at times. So hopefully this is just a full move by the Texans coaching staff to be a little bit less conservative. D'Amico Ryans and these guys being a little bit more serious to get the young players involved here because it just has to happen. Xavier Hutchinson, 0 targets on 27 routes. Christian Kirk, 3 targets on 24 routes. Like those guys aren't giving you anything. Higgins can give you something. Noel can give you something. We just need to see both of these guys. So I wouldn't go crazy adding any of them, but I do hope that we can see a second half surge from these players.
All right, we always talk a ton about the receivers for you, and then I got to rush through tight ends. So let's talk about some tight ends quick here. Juwan Johnson, he is on bye, but man, has he been producing. And we saw early in the season for him, he had some great stats in the opening month. Then he dealt with an injury, had a few down games. He is right back there producing again, right? At least 50 yards or a touchdown in 4 straight games, coming off 92 yards and a touchdown against the Panthers. He gets to play the Panthers again in the first week of the fantasy playoffs too. So this is somebody I think you can go out and with confidence play as a low-end tight end 1 the rest of the way. With Shaheed gone, the targets are going elsewhere. He is getting a lot of work in that offense. Really like him. Colston Loveland at the Vikings, Cade Otton at the Bills, maybe even Dawson Knox versus the Bucks, although there's a lot of guys I could have put in that last spot. But Loveland and Otton right now, we're seeing decent performances from them. I was very happy to see Colston Loveland come out, and though the snaps went back down, they did, Harmon. He was over 80% the prior 2 games, went down to 61 this week with Cole Kmet back, with Burden out there. There were a lot of other options in the offense, but he follows up that huge 118-yard game with a touchdown, follows it up with 55 yards, which is not bad for a tight end. That is pretty good, and especially when it's a guy who we know is a first-round talent, who I continue to think the best is yet to come for him this year. He's only going to get more involved in this offense as we go. So he's another guy that's in that low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 mix. Cade Otton, kind of like the Tez Johnson thing, right? It's a similar situation where you can play him when all these other guys are injured at receiver, and when those guys come back, don't even think about it. Cade Otton is going to become a background player in that offense. He is not going to get the targets anymore. He'll be the starter, but he won't get the targets anymore. That's just the way it's always gone for him. So right now in his last few games, 81 yards, 51 yards, 65, 40, 82 this week on 9 catches. He's putting up nice numbers, certainly can consider him. And then Dawson Knox, it'll just come down to how long Kincaid's out for, and you could consider him as a streamer, but really nothing more than that. And there's a few guys, like I said, I could have put Luke Musgrave in there, although Luke Musgrave, I got to do it, Harmon. He's playing on Monday night. Am I doing? Is it
no, I'm starting him in 2 places. Don't do it.
Is he a guy? Is he hopefully no injuries? He has a good game. He's a guy you could consider in better matchups as we go. But yeah, I feel bad. And then to finish it off, one deep sleeper as we're running down the clock here. Kyle Williams. I'll go back to receiver so we can let you go off at the end. Kyle Williams on the Patriots finally got his opportunity this week. Came in, did all his work on 1 catch, 72-yard touchdown, but flashed what he could do for this offense. And it's kind of like the TreVeyon Henderson thing. Let's get some other guys in this offense that bring some juice. He's a rookie out here, and he got the opportunity because Kayshon Boutte was hurt. We'll see when Kayshon Boutte comes back. But right now, I think you could look at Kyle Williams as somebody that you could stash, potentially play if Boutte remains on the sidelines, but somebody that could give this passing attack a little something extra. We know how good Drake May is, so go out and get one of his rookie weapons and see if he becomes a meaningful fantasy option down the stretch.
Did get a notification because this team plays on Thursday as we're taping this. Ramondre Stevenson, Kayshon Boutte, and Terrell Jennings all limited in practice on Monday. So we might see them this week. We might not. It is a short week, so we'll see. But yeah, just on Kyle Williams, thought it was an okay game in isolation. Clearly flashed the speed, clearly flashed the man coverage ability, but you can still see he's not like fully ramped up. And the problem for him is that Booty will be back, and Booty has been an explosive play guy for them. And Matt Collins had 100 yards in this past game. So I'm like, is there room for him? He's not going to take Diggs' job. Maybe he rotates in a little more, which would mostly just be a dynasty thing. I'd be a little surprised, I guess, if he ended up being kind of somebody that we're starting in fantasy the rest of the way. But it is a interesting prospect attached to a good offense. So at least there is that.
We're talking deeper leagues. He's 2% roster. We're talking deep stashes here. We talked about Phil Maffa one time in this section. Come on.
You talked about Phil Maffa, let's be clear. And I did have to start Kyle Williams in a deep league. So I'm not completely poo-pooing it. Those are my level-headed expectations. And Boone, don't put me in a box, buddy. Okay, I'm happy to talk tight ends for much longer next week if you want to than these receivers. You think I haven't talked enough about Tez Johnson and Jaden Higgins and in other areas of my life? I'm content if we want to hit some other positions longer next week. You just let me know, buddy. You get in the driver's seat and you drive the car. I'm just along for the ride here, man.
Sounds good, man.
All right, that is going to do it for today's show. Packed episode. We got a ton covered in this one. We will be back tomorrow. Ray Garvin joins the show for his usual appearance on the Tuesday show. The Week 11 data dump, the 10 stats you need to know heading into Week 11. That's going to be live right here, 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Until then, we are out.